Hi, and welcome to Learn with Sawgrass, the Wednesday edition. We're here with you every Tuesday afternoon at 3 p.m. and every Wednesday morning at 10 a.m. to help you learn everything you need to know about Sawgrass. We're going to go through the products, we're going to go through the software, we're going to offer you some inspiration, and days like today we're going to offer you some business tips. So I hope you join us. I am Rhonda, the Education Manager here at Sawgrass. We do these live on YouTube, but you of course can watch them later on your own time as well. And we are joined by Rhodes, who is doing our sounds, and he's also in the chat. So if you have any things that you have learned in this area that you want to throw in, he'll be glad to tell me those so I can share. And he also answers any questions you may have too. So just check out the chat, give him any information. If you joined us yesterday, we did walk through some, I think, trending themes and products that should be in your store if you're selling this holiday season and honestly year-round. And then today we're going to talk specifically about some production tips. So initially when I put this on the agenda, I had said Christmas production tips. And it's actually turned into a little bit more because recently I did a rather large job, got my hands dirty in the whole world of large production orders or production orders in general. And so I wanted to share my learnings. I think that was one of the first things I said to my boss after I did the project was I learned a lot of things that I'd love to share in a workshop. So that's what today is. So as I'm going through my learnings in producing orders and producing large orders, I want you to do the same. So please feel free to drop those in the comments. If you're listening this later, go ahead and put those in the comments then too, just so we can see them and we can share them with the other users. All right, so just to let you know what I didn't mean to bring one today and I forgot, so apologies. But what I made were clipboards. So the old wooden MDF clipboard or fiberboard clipboard with the clip at the top, and I put a design on the back, a pencil with the teacher's name, and then lots of stars and other fun things around it. Now in this case, this is an elementary school. It is one that an organization I'm part of works with. So this was a donation. So the clipboards were provided to me. I donated my time. My time. And then Sawgrass did kick in the ink and the printers and the presses and all that fun stuff. But it was a donation. Now this was a large donation because we did one for every employee in the elementary school. So there were 80. So we did have to do 80 of these clipboards. So I want to tell you a little bit about my learnings, but before I do, I will say, if you are tied to schools at all, clipboards with VersaFlex are an amazing idea, and simply because every teacher loves to have something with their name on it. We actually had an assistant teacher who said just that it made her feel legitimate and made her feel like a teacher to have something with their name on it. So just a little tip if you want to think about some Christmas gifts for teachers. Anything with their name is great, but the clipboards are a pretty cool idea. All right, so let's talk about my learning. So like I said, I did 80 of these. And I will tell you probably my two biggest fails was I did miss 4 names. There were 2 that I thought were acceptable that they thought were not acceptable. And then on top of that, it was a huge time crunch for me. And with some issues I had up front, which I'll tell you about in a little bit, I had to purchase some clipboards on my own to replace some. And I think some of my learnings kind of help avoid that. So let's jump right in. Here are my 5 learnings about doing a large production order. And I think this really goes for any production order at all. So the first thing to consider is your workflow. So what's going to be the best workflow for you to get this produced? So we talk about it all the time. with the Sawgrass print utility, you can either just hit the create button and drop files in that way. You can use send to Sawgrass print utility, and then you can use the quick print folders too. But when we talk about workflow, it goes so much beyond that. So, when are you doing it? How long should each one take? What is going to be your process? Is it a start to finish? Is it some other pieces? We're going to talk about those as we go through some of these other points. But that whole workflow piece, where does it start? When do you do certain things in the process? Where do they go when they're finished? All of that is going to be very important. Now, one of the things that could have easily saved me a lot of trouble is point number 2, and that's going to be creating some sort of sign-off. I did try this, but I ended up accidentally printing my list double-sided, and so I was getting confused as I marked things through, and it was kind of going through paper, so I created more of a hassle for myself with the way I did the checklist. But having something so that you can sign them off as you go, and that kind of goes into point number 3, which is batching. So how are you setting this up? How many are you doing at a time? I set a good number of 10. I would open 5 files in the Sawgrass print utility, do all of my settings, and then I would print those, print and press those. It was VersaFlex, so it was more of a print and press as we went. Did those 5, put them aside, and then did the next 5. I had them in the files in folders of 10, and I think that's where my confusion got in, and where I lost the 4 was because I was doing 5s and 10s, and it got a little confusing because I didn't properly define my workflow. Now, this is the most important point. And this is point number 4, my biggest learning. Please, 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 please hear me on this. No matter when you are planning to produce the order, you need to do a sample run through Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday. Okay? Now, some of you may already understand this, but if you do it on Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday and you need assistance, that's when the care team can get you started and most likely have it resolved by Friday. Where my time crunch started was because I assumed everything was going to go right, and I did my first production on Saturday. I'd set aside multiple hours to do production on Saturday, and all of that turned into troubleshooting because I ran into a problem that I wasn't expecting, and even me as a Sawgrass employee had no one to reach out to. So I was troubleshooting something without any assistance, and it didn't work. And so I lost all of that time and about 10 clipboards because I was going. Now, I'll get to that one in a minute, but it's very important. If you're going to do a large production order, at least do a run through so you can see any issues you may have and you can resolve those then and get that taken care of during the week. Give yourself some peace of mind. Now, are there things that can still happen on the weekend? Yes. But if it's something like a cloth nozzle, you're probably going to see that at the very beginning. If it's something where your paper is jamming, again, typically you're going to see that at the beginning, and at least you're going to get to use some of your weekend time. So always make sure you're building in a buffer for issues, but the other thing is do at least a small run during the week so you can get any of that taken care of when there are people who can help you. Because even me ran into the same thing. So it's always good to kind of get that going at the beginning so that you know. Now, here's the other mistake I made. So I'm making clipboards. As I do the first one, I noticed there are a couple of things. One, because the MDF board or fiber board is pretty thin, it can warp. So I needed to figure out a system to help flatten that. What I should have done is stopped right there and mastered that, and then moved to the next name. Because even though I was using clipboards on the same name, instead of having 5 that were so-so, I would have had all of them be good, because I would have just thrown away the bad ones and started with that one good one. So me and my move forward strategy, probably not the right strategy. Master it, figure out the best way to prevent that warping, to stop the warping, and then go forward from there with everything set up. So this is why you should probably have a few for trial ahead of time. Do that early in the week, and then you're ready to go when you're ready to do your production on the weekend. I've actually now successfully done that. I did a bunch of demos in Orlando at Printing United, and I actually did 3 demos of 3 products every day for 3 days. And so what I did there was, when I bought my product, I bought one to do here to kind of do that sample process and figure out anything I needed to do, a second in case I wanted to test it again in the morning, and then one for the actual demo. And a lot of times what that ended up being was, I didn't do a sample in the morning, but then if I did have an issue, I had another one to do. So I'm promising you, do a run through early in the week, separate than your regular production, to get all of the bugs out, and to make sure that you're doing it at a time when you can get assistance. Now, this plays into my workflow conversation from earlier. The workflow that I had planned would not work, so I did have to switch that. And so some of my, you need to batch, you need to have it in smaller runs, you need, is because of that. And then kind of my final point is that you need to think not only about printing and pressing, but what needs to happen before and what needs to happen after. So one of the things that I have become very aware of over the last few months is this concept of like metal pulling the plastic off. If I were to print and then pull the plastic off while I'm printing and then press onto it, that may not be the best workflow. That may take time away from what I'm doing. And in my case, it was removing the plastic from the clipboards, because some of the clipboards were wrapped. But if you do that too soon, now you're exposing the product to dust, and now you're going to have to wipe it down. We had something recently where someone was going to do some printing and pressing for us, and they removed the plastic because they thought they were going to do them right then. Something happened, didn't happen. Metal didn't get used for 2 weeks. By that point, now it's got dust. Well, I guess it was 1 week. But metal's got dust on it. You're still going to have to take that extra step of using the denatured alcohol and the lint-free cloth to wipe that off to get anything off. So when we talk about workflow, think about that. We have another customer that I've talked to recently where there was some spots on presses. When did you remove the plastic? 3 days ago. Makes sense if you're using them 3 days ago, but if you're unwrapping more than you can use them 1 day, now you've got some that may be exposed to dust or other things. Same thing is going to go for t-shirts. When are you going to use the lint roller? First, do you have the lint roller? Secondly, when are you going to use that lint roller? Same thing with mugs, if you're doing a lot of mugs. Where does that pre-work fit into the process? Now when we talk about the back end and we talk about t-shirts, how about that finishing work? Because those shirts are going to need to have the finishing press. Are you doing pre-press, press, finish press, pre-press, press, press, finish press in that cycle, or are you pre-pressing several and then pressing and then doing the finishing press all at once and then folding them? With my clipboards, when am I going to put them under something to help with the warping? What am I putting it under? how many need to go under at a time, when do we take them out, all of that. So all of these pieces help create a more hectic environment and cause problems, but you can figure out where to save time by doing it in batches, by doing it in that process. So I think all 5 of my points kind of intertwined and tied together, but just to kind of go over them again, make sure that you figure out the best workflow for what you're doing. Because I was having to change settings, because I was printing it landscape on a bigger piece of paper to make it fit properly and all of that, they're buttons. So this is where the quick print folder or where Sim's Sawgrass print utility come in very handy. Now, you may know, I learned that if you drop them into the quick print folder, they're all going to go into the same file. Great if I'm doing sublimation, not great if I'm doing VersaFlex. So those kind of things do become very important. And bringing it back to my point 3 in a minute, because I think that's probably, or point 4, for me, a very important one. 2, make sure you have a checklist so that you're signing things off. Of course, you're quality checking things, you're doing all of this, but having something where you can mark when it's done in box, just so you know what's done and what's still outstanding. Figure out the best in your workflow how to batch. You're never going to do 80 of something just in a row. You are going to have to do them in smaller groups. It helps to make sure they all get done. It helps to maintain quality. So how are you going to batch your production and making sure to batch your production? And then probably the most important to me is doing that sample early in the week so that you have other people to compare notes to, so that you're not in a rush, so that you can work out all of the kinks early on. And if you need the care team, they have time to help you with your ticket so that you're not stressed or missing a deadline. And then finally, remember to think about what you need to do before and what you need to do after. How are you going to schedule those things? What's the best time to not make more work for yourself when it comes to something like removing plastic from metal, or when it comes to having to use a lint roller. So those are my points. Rhodes, did anyone else have any suggestions?
No questions or suggestions right now.
Awesome. So I know this is a little bit of a short one, but I'm hoping this kind of gives you a starting point, some things to think about. If you do come up with some ideas that we didn't have, please put them in the comments so that other users can see those as well. Happy production, and we'll see you back next week. Bye-bye.